come and listen to me spill the tea on the worst parts of Harry Potter. Hello to you there and welcome back to another video with me, the Greg who lived, and in this video I'm going to be spilling all the tea about what I think are the worst parts of Harry Potter. Now, before we begin, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already to my YouTube channel for new videos coming out every single weekend, and I'll be posting some of my older videos that you can catch up on at the end of this video. I've done reviews, I've had you ask me questions, but I've never done what I think are the worst things of Harry Potter. I have printed out some questions, I've cut them up and I've put it in my very own teacup with the grim, and I'm going to be reading these out and then answering on camera very honestly what I think the worst parts of Harry Potter are. These are going to be to do with the book, to do with the films, so there's a good range in here, and hopefully you will agree with some of my points. You might disagree, but make sure you comment below and let me know what you think about my thoughts on Harry Potter. I appreciate that everyone's going to have a slightly different opinion on the Potter series, the parts they like, they don't like, the characters they like, all sorts. But these are my own opinions, but I really would love to hear what you think. As well, I'd just like to say that I will also be doing my favourite of Harry Potter video, so that'll be coming very soon. But I thought it'd be fun to start with the worst of first. Here we go. Question number 1. Which character was portrayed the worst in the films? Wow. I thought I was going to get a hard question to start with, but this is a very easy one. And without hesitation, I would say that the worst character portrayed in the films would be Ginny. They took her character and they did her dirty. I often wondered if this is because Bonnie Wright didn't really want to be in the films after a certain age. Not entirely sure, but I don't think it's even her acting, because the things that she does do are not that bad. They just gave her no personality. Where is the Ginny which is feisty, which is confident, the Quidditch-loving Ginny, the character who gets in an argument with Hermione over Quidditch, who has a go at Ron, who can fight her own battles? Just absolutely non-existent. And instead, we got Bonnie Wright playing this wet wipe of a character who just ends up kissing Harry at weird points and leaving Neville on a bridge. So, not really the character that we all know and love from the book. I think they really did her an injustice, especially as Ginny is such a feisty and confident woman in the book, and I know that a lot of people absolutely love Ginny as a character, and I think the fact that she grew up with Friend George, she would be a bit more than the wishy-washy presentation they decided to give us in the films. And also, she's just rather bland. I don't think anything could be worse than when she just kisses Harry in the room of requirement and says, "I can be your secret up here too." I mean, come on, give us a break. Ginny is all about fighting for what's right, going against the grain, and just being bold and quite fierce. So 100% Bonnie Wright as Ginny Weasley, absolutely atrocious. Question number 2. What is my least favourite magical creature? I think I'd have to go Grindylows, because I don't like the idea of an octopus with even more arms, and it's kind of like a half human, half octopus, which is a weird squid mix. It's all a bit weird. Yeah, Grindylows. Number 3, least favourite director. Well, this leads on quite nicely from the first question, because who directed Bonnie Wright in the later films? That would of course be David Yates, who I think is a pretty abysmal director. I have said this in a previous video, but I just think he's very lazy. He doesn't particularly have a good direction of where he was taking the films. They all come across as too shiny. They don't have as much practical effects in them. They go for more special effects. And I think Fantastic Beasts as well is quite an obvious example of this happening. I think he can tell character stories quite well, but when you've got such a magical world, I think you have a lot of responsibility to keep the magic within it. And I just find his directing style is very bland. Nothing core from the books really made it into a lot of Half-Blood prints, such as the memories with Dumbledore. I just think he's pretty lazy and not good. What would be your worst meal to appear at the sorting feast? Squid rings, calamari, A character everyone loves that you don't. Someone who's quite controversial, but I really don't like Cedric Diggory, which is probably really bad. He was an innocent character, he didn't deserve to die at all. However, I just think he's not that great. I think he's quite arrogant. His friends have got all these badges which are basically bullying Harry, and yet he doesn't tell them to take them off. In fact, he doesn't actually just tell Harry to put the egg in the water. He does the stupid, oh, take a bath. I mean, come on. This dude told you that there were dragons. The least you could do is just say to put it in the bath. Cocky. I know he's not meant to be. I think I'm probably putting a lot of childhood trauma on people like Cedric who are at school, the popular people. But I just feel like Harry's the underdog and he really tries to help Cedric as much as he can, and Cedric just doesn't really repay the favour. Up next, least favourite character overall. I'm going to go with the book characters, and least favourite character overall. And I'm going to make it obvious that it's not going to be Voldemort or Bellatrix or Umbridge, who's an evil character, but a character that just I find really annoying. But one character I really don't like, no matter how many arguments for or against him that I read, but I really don't like Draco Malfoy. I understand he had a very hard childhood, having to sort of live up to the dark reputation. However, I just think no matter what your parents are like, it doesn't mean that you have to be the same as them. I know that he kind of got thrust into the Death Eater, hate Harry Potter club very early on. But I think there's a point where you need to have your own backbone. And I suppose he does have that at the end, but I don't think the fact that he doesn't give Harry in kind of forgives Draco for all the other horrible things that he did, including bullying all three of the Golden Trio, not to mention Luna, Neville, Ginny, probably half of Hogwarts at that point. So he does have his good points, but Draco's still a bit of a bad egg for me. Who has your least favourite costume from the film? Easy peasy this one. I am absolutely going for Tonks' outfit in the 6th film and the 7th film. I don't know what David Yates was thinking, but he took out that whole storyline with Tonks and Remus having Teddy, which I think is quite a developing arc, especially for Lupin in the last film. No, completely remove that. Apparently unnecessary. Yeah, we can have other stupid scenes that he thinks are necessary. Not that I'm bitter. But I think that they did an awful job with her in the later films. I understand during Half-Blood Prince she's kind of having that weird spell. Sirius had just died. She likes Remus, who's kind of buffing her back. But she just goes from this kind of young, punky, rocky look to this weird 80s looking woman with a mullet for no reason. And in the last film, she's got blonde hair and she's dressed a bit like a hippie. Like, what were they doing with her? I do not understand. I think they should have kept with the bubblegum hair, or blue, or something really out there and poppy. Visiting Warner Brothers Studio Tour, they had the Half-Blood Prince costume with her and Lupin. I just think it's very lazy and not a lot of thought really went into developing her character. What would be your least favourite Hogwarts subject? I'm going to split this question into two. So I'm going to do the core subjects at Hogwarts and then the additional subjects that you can take during your 3rd year. For the core subjects, I would definitely have to go with History of Magic. I was never that into history at school, I was never that good at it, and remembering all those dates and names and facts, I just could not do it. And so I think for my additional subject, I would probably go with arithmetic, because I'm really bad at maths. I actually didn't really enjoy maths at school, found it quite boring. Still, have never found a single use for algebra. Whether it was magical or not, I would not find it that interesting. Which character's death did you care about the least? Which is quite a harsh question. Probably Pettigrew's death. Metal Hand understands that he's going to let Harry go, which is why it kills him, is a sign of him kind of feeling bad for what he's done and a sign of remorse. But I just think overall he is quite obviously a bit of a rat and kind of deserved his sticky end. Now this one's a good one. What is my least favourite scene in the whole of the film series? That probably goes once again to Mr. David Yates, who decided to include a very strange scene with the burrow on fire. I'm not really sure why he thought that was a good scene to put in. I don't really understand why he thought to include that into the series when he decided not to show more of Dumbledore's memories or any of the important things leading up to Tom Riddle becoming Voldemort. But I suppose he was the director, and so his say was the final say. Least favourite set from Harry Potter. There are so many good ones, it's hard to find a least favourite. I would probably go for something like Bathilda Bagshot's house, because it was quite grotty. There was a lot of gone off food, it was very dingy, bad lighting, and of course we know that she has been dead for a very long time, so that's probably why. What would be the worst pet to take to Hogwarts? A toad? I don't like frogs. Weird and squishy, a bit gross. And I'd quite like to take an owl. Hopefully it wouldn't eat me, wouldn't try to rip my arm off. And I like cats, and yeah, I think toads are probably the most boring. Which Harry Potter soundtrack is your least favourite? This is a particularly hard one because I like that every soundtrack is different depending on the film, the different moods, different sort of motives that go into each one. But I think I would go with Deathly Hallows Part 1, just because it is quite sad. It's quite dull, quite somber, quite kind of meh. It does have some exciting parts, some really good parts. I really love Obliviate, that's a particularly good one, but for me, I think it's the least exciting out of the whole series. Who is my least favourite member of the Golden Trio? Easily, without hesitating, I would go with Ron. I think he gets very jealous, he gets very comparative to what everyone else is doing rather than focusing on what he's doing, which is completely understandable. But sometimes you really wish that he would give Harry the benefit of the doubt and kind of be a bit more supportive. But saying that, you know, he does kind of glue the trio together, and he does add a lot of humour to the books as well as the films. Which is my least favourite book from the series? I think this is going to shock a lot of people because it's probably one of their favourites, but I think my least favourite would probably have to be Chamber of Secrets. Quite boring. To me, not much happens. It's quite a filler, and unfortunately I think it does feel that problem where the second book is never as good as the first, and the ones after that are always better. So definitely Chamber of Secrets. I think it does have its good parts, and it has some great characters. Lockhart, Dobby, Ginny, but yeah, I find it quite static, quite boring, and not much happens. Yeah, it just seems to go on forever. And following on from that one, we've actually got what is my least favourite film. It is quite hard, but I think I am going to go with Half-Blood Prince, just because it turns into a bit of a rom-com. It's not that accurate to the book. I think Daniel Radcliffe's acting is particularly bad in that one, which he has admitted as well. And we just get very unnecessary scenes like the burrow on fire. We don't get any of the character development from Ginny, and overall it's just a very lazy book to film adaptation, I think. What would be my least favourite shop in Diagon Alley? The apothecary. That seems quite gross, lots of squidgy dead stuff. Apparently it smells as well, so I can't imagine that being a particularly fun place to visit. Who is the worst actor in Harry Potter? Oh, now that is a tough question. In terms of worst person, it's probably the guy who plays Crabbe, because he got done for drugs, which is never a good thing. But in terms of acting ability, I think despite having not very many lines and pretty wishy-washy lines at that, I would go with Bonnie Wright. I actually think she's a better actress at the age of 11 or 12 at the first two films than she is in any of the others, and I can't even think of any good lines that she does have. And here we have the very last question. Which is my least favourite Triwizard task? Now, in terms of least favourite, I'm going to go with the book versions because we don't talk about the hedge maze from the Goblet of Fire, which was pretty abysmal. But I'm going to go with probably the first task. Don't really find dragons overly exciting. But then again, watching the second task would be really boring because obviously you're under the lake. No, I'm going to go with the second task. Personally, I think it's the scariest, and it would be the one which I would hate to do the most. Therefore, it probably is the worst. But I think the first one is just not the most exciting out of all three. And that concludes the end of my worst of video, and I hope that you've really enjoyed finding out what I think some of the worst parts of Harry Potter are. Like I said at the beginning, you might not agree with all of them, you might agree with some of them, and you might completely disagree with all of them as well. But make sure to comment below and tell me your thoughts and any future questions that you would like me to answer in more of my videos. You can also catch up on some of my older videos by clicking here, or you can click here, and don't forget to hit the big subscribe button at the bottom so you can catch up on all my old videos and never miss out on any of my future videos as well. Stay safe, stay magical, and I'll be seeing you all very, very soon. Until then, bye!